our knowledge and our the information, dear Father, that we will be needing as we continue on studying in this campus. We pray, Lord, for the Holy Spirit to be with us, to give us wisdom, to inspire us, and to help us. And thank you so much for everything. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. And in behalf of the SA officers, we welcome you all. And also to our friends who are watching live through Facebook and YouTube. So we welcome everyone as well. So tonight we're here and we will be blessed by our speaker. He is an associate professor from the graduate school who's teaching education and TESOL, TESOL courses for master's and doctoral courses. So we will be listening to him as he will orient us about culture shock, and I believe we will be blessed. Because I know that maybe for some, you have experienced multicultural environment already, but for some, maybe this will be your first time to be here in a multicultural environment. So before we give time to our speaker, shall we sing a song entitled Jesus Loves the Little Children? And can we invite Sister Bethel to lead us for the song?
I believe everyone knows this song, right? So let's sing Jesus Loves the Little Children.
Children of the world, red, yellow, black, and white, all are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Can we do it again? Little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world.
So, Professor, we will give you another time to speak to us, to enlighten us, and to share to us about culture shock and orient us, Professor.
Good evening, everyone. I think you can do much better than that. Good evening. If you decide to come and live here at AIIAS, you need to learn to greet one another. That's one of the things we have been covering in the previous sessions on cultural orientation. And this evening, it is a privilege for me from the Student Association to be speaking to you about culture shock. I do not know exactly why they wanted me to talk about this. That means a lot of people are being shocked here at AIIAS, and we're hoping that we can try to make that a little bit more smooth for you. So when we talk about culture shock, we first of all need to define what culture is. I think we need to have some basic understanding or basic agreement on what culture is, and then from there we're going to dive into culture shock. So here is one definition that I think may help us. We can all agree that when we say culture, we're talking about the values of a specific people. We are talking about the behaviors and the customs. People do these things without thinking, because everybody in that community understands that. But when you come to AIIAS, we find a plethora of cultures. We have people behaving differently than we do. They have customs that are different from what we have from our own original cultures. And so we're going to look at some of the stories that have happened over the years since I have come to AIIAS. We're going to learn from the lived experiences of a number of people. Customs and as well as way of thinking. People from a certain culture have the tendency to think a certain way that is different from other people. I remember talking to one student. I want to mention which specific country he came from, but I can say that it was from the Asian continent, and he was telling me that in our country, it is okay to plagiarize. We talk about it, people talk about it at school, but nobody will ever check on that. And so even if they talk about it, nobody cares about the talk of the professor because everybody knows that even the professors are just copying from one another. And so that student was struggling. When he submitted something on Turnitin, it was highlighting everything and he lost points. He said, "This is unfair. I shouldn't lose points because of plagiarism." And when he told me that, I started checking some papers that had been submitted to me before we purchased the plagiarism checker, and I discovered that indeed a number of students from that country had plagiarized. Not because they think it's right, but because they didn't know any better than that. Culture includes the food, the music, the clothing, how people dress, reflects where they come from. I want to start with a few experiences to help us understand how culture shock happens. I want to look at one that I personally was shocked with when I came here as a student. I came here as a student 1 week before 2000. Yeah, that makes me a very old man. And everywhere I went, I was greeting everybody with a handshake. And I quickly realized within a few days that whenever I shook people's hands, they looked at me funny, like something is not right in his mind, because he same thing that you were appreciating before. Now you started saying, oh, the jeepneys, I don't understand why the jeepneys have to be so loud. I don't understand why the dogs are barking so loud. Have you noticed that there are so many ants in the apartments? And the lizards, have you noticed they are everywhere? And everybody's speaking in languages that, have you noticed the Chinese and the Japanese and the Latinos? They speak languages we don't understand. And when you go to the bank, people are lining up for a long, long time. Nothing is working here. I wish I could just go home. This country is terrible. AIIAS is the worst institution I've ever been at. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you think something is wrong with AIIAS or the Philippines. But actually, it is culture shock. I remember having one student at my office once. This student had come from the Caribbean. I won't mention the country. And she was a well-traveled student. And she came to my office. She was depressed. She was telling me, she was complaining about all these things. And she said, the system, I go to the accounting office, there is this. I go to the professors, there is this. And she said, I feel like getting sick. I'm going to get sick. And I told her she liked reading. I picked a book from my shelves, and there's a chapter on culture shock. I said, I know you like reading. Just go and read this chapter. Don't read the rest of it. Just read this chapter. She opened it. She said, culture shock. I said, oh, no, come on. It's not culture shock. No, I have traveled the world. I know places. It cannot be culture shock. I said, just go and read. So she took the book. She went home. The next day, she came back with a book. She sat down in my office. She said, you were right. I cannot believe all this time I was going through culture shock. Can it happen to people who are well-traveled? Yes, it can happen. Then from there, you go through the recovery process, where one day you'll wake up, it's a happy day, and then in the afternoon, you're down again. The next day, you're happy day. The next day, you're down. So you are now adjusting until you get to the level of adaptation. When you get to the level of adaptation, one more time you tell people, I don't want to go. I wish I could continue with my PhD. So, but you went there for master's degree. So, yeah, I think I should just finish my PhD before I go back. So, but you were talking about coming back. You're tired of the Philippines. No, it's okay now. It's okay. Everything is all right. Oh, guys, let's go to Baguio. Oh, yeah, let's go to Baguio. Now you're no longer posting so many pictures because you have so many friends here. You feel that you fit in. Unfortunately for us here at AIIAS, we have a phenomenon that I think we should do more research about, and that is about Filipino students and workers who come to live at AIIAS. We assume that because they are Filipinos, they are not going to experience any culture shock. But actually, even if they are Filipinos, number one, they have different subcultures within the Philippines. Many of our Filipino students and workers come from Mindanao, the southern part. If they even mingle with Filipinos here in Cavite, they will already struggle. How much more when they are meeting with more than 70 nations represented here at AIIAS, they silently struggle with culture shock. I remember one of them telling me, one of our students who comes for cohort programs, she was telling me just a few months ago that, one thing I don't really like at AIIAS is the music. Man, the music is just becoming too worldly. And she's a Filipina, wonderful Filipino Christian. But she finds that our music is a little extreme. But if I ask, many of you will say, oh, the music's perfectly fine. It's lovely. We love the music. But for this specific Filipino, she said, one of the things that we talk about when you guys are not around is that the music is troublesome. What causes culture shock? Number one, cultural difference. When you have two cultures together and they're different, there will be culture shock because you think about things a certain way and the other person is thinking differently. Different rules, different expectations. When the institution expects this and where you come from, they expect something different. Different values. And language barrier. We have a lot of students who come to AIIAS and they are not fluent in English. And so you want to express yourself, but you cannot. It frustrates you. Let me tell you, if you are sitting in the English Center, let me tell you that other people have been there and they have done just fine. I was telling my students just an hour ago, because I was having a class, that I went to the English Center and I spent there 2 months. And at that time, I thought I will never make it to the graduate school. But you know what? Eventually, I made it to the graduate school. But it is frustrating. When you have so many ideas, you have a class discussion or church discussion, and you want to speak, but you cannot because of the language barrier. It leads you to culture shock. Quality of services. When your expectations are one thing and the services that are being provided are something different. Registration process, admission process, accounting services, classes, the way they are taught, banks, malls, purchasing things online and things like that. We have a certain way that they work in our original countries, and they work differently from us in the new country. I have heard all kinds of complaints here at AIIAS. Some people come from countries where women should never, ever, ever dress in pants in public. And when they see a woman dress in pants, they say, this institution is becoming worldly. And then you find students, let me pick on the Africans for a little bit, who get here and they see men dressed in skirts. You know, my friends from the Pacific, do not give that to an African man. And if you give it, make sure they dress it in the Pacific. Because the day they wear that on the African continent, if it's a pastor, that might be the last day of being a pastor. There is this thing of a skirt being for women and pants being for men. I have seen this also with Myanmar students, which is perfectly fine. Some of these skirts, correct me if I'm wrong, there's one that is made of some natural, I don't know how you call that. I remember my colleague telling me that it could sell up to $9,000. And when some people see this, they don't understand the value that this is one of the highest dress codes that you can get. And so as we come across all these, we need to understand that there is no one way of dressing. And we're going to come back to that a little later. There's a story that our former student from the seminary shared with me. He's a very good friend of mine from Europe. He came with his family. They graduated already. They came from Europe. They did not know much about English. In fact, he told me when he came, he just knew how to say, my name is, good morning, how are you? That's it. So he goes to the English Center. He sends his 2 children to the academy. And on the very first day, before the day was over, they called him. They say, you need to come to school because there's a big problem. Your child has just started a big fight here at the academy. And he's looking, he's a pastor, he said, my child has never, ever fought anyone. And my question is it wrong to be Korean? What had happened? So he rushed there. They tried to explain what had happened. The son didn't know a word in English. So the only thing that was happening was to see what was happening around. So what had happened, he went to the class, and there was this young Korean child who was so friendly and just went to this European child to greet him in English. And when he greeted him, the European child saw the eyes of the Korean child. And the way the Korean child was looking at him, in that Korean country's perspective, it meant, I'm challenging you and I can knock you down. So this Korean child, this European child just punched that Korean child. And the Korean child does not understand, I'm just trying to be nice to the new kid. And the new kid, instead of greeting me back, is punching me. So they called the father. The father said, this is what has happened. Your child has just beaten a Korean, innocent Korean child. And so he asked the child in the mother tongue, said, what happened? Son, you have never fought anyone. He said, Dad, this fellow started it. I was just coming to class, and he just looked at me like this. He said, that is what he did. He said, look, he's doing that to you too. But actually, it was just a physiological shape of the eyes of the Korean child. It had nothing to do with the child challenging the European child. And in the end, they tried to reconcile everything, only to discover that it was total misunderstanding. Here in the Philippines, for those who come from outside, you'll discover that sexual orientation is very liberal, that you can be born a man and decide to become a woman. You can be born a woman and decide to become a man. And this is something that people struggle with when you leave AIIAS for the first time and you see people who look like men, but they are acting like women and vice versa. And this can be a serious source of shock. So how do you know you're going through culture shock? You may feel up and down. You feel excited today, and tomorrow you're down. You may feel wanting to stay home. You don't want to go to school. And many of us have gone through that. You may feel like going home is the first chance I have. I want to go back to Korea. I want to go back to Japan. I want to go back to Ghana because this place is terrible. You are going through culture shock. You feel frustrated very, very easily. Sometimes you do not get enough sleep. Because of that, you may get headaches, and some may lose appetite. What kind of food are they even serving here? I don't like the food here. It's oily, also it's sweet, it's salty, it's bland, it's too dry, it's too liquid. You start getting frustrated with everything. Sometimes you may get into depression. So, what are some of the effects you'll have? You may lose motivation. You may feel hopeless. Like, will I ever make it with my studies here? You may feel depressed. You may feel disappointed. This is what I was promised, that AIIAS is like this and this, that the Philippines is like this and this and this. It's a total lie. You feel disappointed. I want to tell you a personal story that I experienced in Uganda. We had traveled there for a mission trip, and we went to western side of Uganda. So those from Uganda, they know exactly the culture there. And I asked for a cup of water. We were building a church, and they bring this lady who was old enough to be my mom, and she comes with a cup of water, and she knelt in front of me. I didn't know what to do. I looked around. Nobody else was kneeling. Nobody else was drinking. And naturally, what I did, I also knelt down. And everybody from Uganda started laughing out loud. They say, what are you doing, Brother Safary? I said, I don't know what to do. They said, no, you're supposed to just stand and just thank her for the water. I said, but she's kneeling down. I said, yeah, that's respect. I said, but I'm not God for somebody to kneel in front of me. So no, if she does not kneel in front of you, she is not going to feel good about herself. It was a big struggle. Each culture has things that they do that make perfect sense to them, but they may not make perfect sense to you. And here at AIIAS, it is the real halo of that situation. Because we have all the continents except Antarctica maybe, are already represented here. And so we have this halo. Everybody thinks that the culture is the best culture. How do we cope? How should you cope? Consider having friends. And if for those who have families, you may even ask them to visit. Talk to people who have survived culture shock. People who have been here for a year or two. Talk to them. How did you survive this? Ask people to visit some relatives or some friends who are studying in other universities that you grew up with. When they come and they talk to you, you feel pretty good that day. And in the process, you get out of it. Get involved in the community activities. Here at AIIAS, we have a lot of activities, jail ministries. We have all kinds of churches around here. Get involved. Because the busier you are with these activities, the easier it gets with adaptation. You need to adjust to your own preferences, to your own food, the new food, the new environment, because guess what? You are not going to change people here. They have their way of doing things, and you will most likely have to be the one to adapt. Because if you come from Tahiti, and you want everybody here at AIIAS to act like people from Tahiti, it's not going to happen. You need to find ways to access traditional food for those who are craving for their food. The good thing with the globalization today, you may maybe order online or try to check in Manila if they have something like that. Change your eating habits, because you will not have access to all the food that comes from your country unless your country is around here. If you come from South Korea, you may have a lot of Korean stores even here in Silang. But if you happen to come from South Africa, I don't think you have a South African store here. So you'll have to learn to eat rice more than once a day, for example. Join in social activities and church activities. Get involved. For those who are Christians, you can get involved. And the more you are involved in these activities, the easier things will get for you. The next one, embrace diversity, because it is now becoming part of who you are. You will have to embrace that and accept that this is now my reality until I finish my studies. In fact, it's not bad to be a global citizen. Let me tell you about a personal story that I experienced in Myanmar. We had distance learning center there, and I traveled there twice. The first time I traveled to Myanmar, I struggled a lot. You see, when you are in Myanmar, the beautiful thing about Myanmar is that they have a lot of variety of foods. And so when you have lunch, it's like a banquet just for one or two people. The first time I saw that, I said, do you have other people who are coming? I said, no, it's just the two of us. I said, oh my goodness, that's a lot, like a banquet. So many things, just one or two people. So the first meal, I'm there, the host is there, the wife comes, and then she serves me food. I'm sitting. And the husband has just prayed. And then they both sit down. They say, okay, now it's time to eat. And I see that there's only one plate. And I'm looking, I say, okay, let's eat now. They say, no, we are already done. Okay, but we had just come together. They made sure they ate before me. And so I started eating because I was hungry. It was lunch. We had been working in the morning. I'm excited. I've been teaching the whole morning, so I'm really, really hungry. I get that spoon and the fork. I start eating. As I put the spoon on the plate, both husband and wife, they look at the plate. And as I put the spoon in the mouth, the four eyes come to my eyes. I said, take one. I do it again. It goes like that. It's like, okay, what's going on here? In most cultures, if somebody is giving you food and they keep looking at you when you're eating, it means indirectly, hey, caballero, slow down on that food. We want to save some for the children later on, right? In many cultures, that's how it is. If somebody invites you and then you're eating, they're looking at you like that, and when you put the spoon down, they look down, and you put it up, they look at your face. It's like they're telling you, hey, slow down, hey, save some for other guests or for the children. So the first 3 days, I was struggling. I could not eat a lot because I thought they wanted me to leave food on the table. And the thing is that whenever I will finish something, the wife will dump some more food there. I said, what is the point of dumping so much food, and yet you're looking at me? It took me 3 days. I was already losing weight before I could ask. I said, what is really happening? I asked somebody else. They said, oh, no, when people are looking at you, that means they are encouraging you to eat. They're saying, enjoy the food. We're so happy that you're enjoying that food. Okay. The next time I went, you know exactly what happened, right? The more they looked at me and said, do you have other people who are coming? Please bring some others. Let them sit down. And I ate more. The next time I went there, I gained maybe 5 kilograms. Because they were looking at me and said, I know the trick. You look at me, you are telling me to eat. I'm going to enjoy this. Just a simple thing like that can make your life miserable. Either you lose a lot of weight or you gain a lot of weight just because somebody is looking at you. So here are a few things, and we're going to end here, and then we're going to entertain some questions for the remainder of the time. Some of the things to survive here at AIIAS. What should you do? Number one, I'm proposing 10 things. Please be on time. It doesn't matter which culture you come from. Here at AIIAS, we expect people to be on time because every service, every class, every program is running on a specific schedule. So if class is at 8, don't try to show up at 8:10. It will have a negative effect on you, on your class performance, your grade. The same thing, church starts at 8:45. If you come at 9:15, people will already be in their programs. And if the professor says you're going to present in 5 minutes, please don't make it 8 minutes, because they have already prepared things that need to be taken care of the whole 2 hours and a half, 2 hours and 50 minutes. When you go beyond that time, it's going to make their time management difficult. Again, these are general things that I came up with. Avoid making excuses. Sometimes students come to me and say, because I'm busy, that's why, you can have 2 more days extension. The thing is that most of the professors have been students themselves. They have been where you are, and they know what excuse is right and the other one that is not right. Make international friends, because if you come from Rwanda and all your friends are Rwandans, you're going to even struggle more. But the more friends you create from different nations, the more you are accepting of the different cultures. Respect other people's culture, because there's no culture that is above any other culture. Every single culture has positive and negative things. When you're new, you may not agree with that, but 1 year or 2 years from now, you will agree that there are things that need to be improved within your own culture. So learn to respect other cultures, especially if those cultures are not against biblical principles. Learn from other cultures. This is a big, big blessing for AIIAS that you don't find in many other Adventist universities. This is the university that is the most culturally diverse, where the local students are minority, just like international students. So this is a place where we can learn so much without having to travel to several countries. Let's learn to say sorry. Let's not just say, oh, come on, that's not a big deal. I mean, where I come from, it's perfectly fine. No, but it's not perfectly fine to this new other person. where he or she comes from. Like in the case of my student who kissed a Chinese student. She could have said, oh, come on, it's just a kiss, it's just a greeting. I'm just being nice to you. Why are you so upset? I was just greeting you like a sister in Christ. But what she did, she apologized. She said, I'm really, really sorry. I have offended you because the way you look at things is different from the way I look at things. Ask when you are confused. Don't generalize and stereotype people. Oh, all the Europeans are like this. All the Americans are like this. That's why I hate Americans. That's why I don't like people from Mexico. How about if you ask the person? For example, I was talking to somebody this week who told me that in their country, I want to mention the country because it's represented here, when you are invited to an event, you do not show up on time. Because if you show up on time, that used to be the work of a slave. So if you show up on time, you are telling everyone that you are not important at all. So always make sure at least 5-10 minutes late to show that you are an important person. And other cultures will say, okay, that is nonsense. I don't want to ever adapt to that. But if you happen to be in that place, maybe you should ask why people are doing that. Get involved in social activities. We talked about that. Do not isolate yourself. It will not help you at all. Even if your English is still limited, for those who may still be in an English center, go out there. Because actually when you're out there, you're going to practice your English. And you'll build more confidence, self-esteem in your language learning. And for those who know English, just get involved. It's a lot of fun. You may not remember all the research and linguistic courses you're going to take here, but the time you spend going on the outing with your friends, your classmates, it will be something you'll remember for a long, long, long time. Learn to be a global citizen. The moment that you come to study at AIIAS, you become a different person. You are no longer just an Indian. You are no longer just a Ugandan. You are no longer just a Chinese. You are a global citizen. Chances are very high that when you graduate from here, you will even work in another country. So learn to live with people who are different from you. The next one, learn to be a Christian citizen. This is a Christian campus. You may not be a Christian when you come here. We have had students who are Buddhists, and we have had some who are not Adventists. You cannot come here and think we are going to change who we are as Adventists. You will have to learn to live like a Christian. If they say no smoking, then you will not bring smoking in your apartment. If they say there's no drinking in the Adventist church, we expect, the administration and everybody in the community expect that you will not do that. The last one, and I think the most important thing, please pray. It is a real struggle when you go through culture shock. You can feel really down. You can feel depressed. And trust me, other people have gone through that, and others are going through that while you are struggling with that. Anybody who has been here for 2-3 months, those who came last month or last May, you may be going through that right now. It is a struggle. Many people go through it. Don't lose hope. Pray about it. Say, Lord, help me to go through this. Now I understand that it happens to everybody. So if other people have survived, Lord, you can help me to also survive. And I know for sure, sooner or later, you'll get out of there and you'll want to even stay in the Philippines for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm ready to take your questions.
So, thank you very much, Professor. So, now we will be entertaining some questions from
And the comments too.
and comments and suggestions, perhaps. So, anyone? About from
Still sinking in.
okay.
Comments and questions.
Oh, we have.
I
from
see one
the
over
back.
there. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
You say that there are 4 steps here, and finally the last one is to get used to the place and to adapt. And now what will happen if I'm adapt here and I go back to my place?
Yes.
I will have this cultural shock back there, and
Yes.
this is also, it will be even more harder for
Yes.
me to go back and to feel depressed when I will be home.
That's correct. I didn't mention that one because this was, I was specifically told to talk about cultural shock orientation. But yes, there's what we call reverse culture shock. And anyone who has come to AIIAS, you've been living here 1-2 years or more, and you have never been back to your country, that is going to happen also. I remember the very first time I went back to my country. I'd been away for 5 years. And when I went back, I started seeing how people were living. I said, how in the world do people live like this every single day? Of course, I couldn't say it. I just had to keep it to myself. One of the things that drove me crazy was how slow everything was. I mean, it was like a slow motion. I said, no, how could you get anything done with this kind of life? And so just like this one, the first week, second week, it was honeymoon stage. Everybody was coming, hey, Safary is back, hey, how are you? How is it there? And so on. I became instant star, celebrity. But after that, I started seeing things. I said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But you can't say it because you come from there. And so I always wish that right before graduation, there should be also another cultural orientation for reverse culture shock and how people are going to reintegrate in their communities. We have also some students, a special group of students, who are here without their families, their children, their spouses are not here. When they go back, they struggle because they have acquired a different, a globalized culture, and they are supposed to go back to their families where they are still in the original culture. It is another challenge. But some of the things we have talked about can help, but we need another orientation for people right before graduation. We see another hand there. It's good because he's done with the course, pragmatics, so I hope it's a comment.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, he's one of my beloved teacher in TESOL. I just wanted to ask, like, especially for those who are new here, do you agree with the quote, when in Rome, do as the Romans do? And how far are we supposed to keep our culture when we go to another place? Or are we supposed to do as the Romans do? So what is your perspective?
Yeah,
on
I
that?
think we addressed that in the presentation, that you need to learn to embrace other cultures as long as you're not conflicting with the biblical principles. If that's how you're going to communicate with other people, you'll have to let go of some of your personal cultural practices that are offensive to the new group of people and try to buy and to adapt some of those cultural values that come from other cultures. For example, one of the things we were talking about last Sabbath, there was a meeting, special meeting for the African community in AUP. We talked about this. For example, here in the Philippines, when you take a jeepney, you know, when you pay, money travels from hand to hand to hand to hand all the way to the driver. And then from there, it travels back hand to hand to hand to hand. Even if it's 2 pesos, it will get back to you. We all agree that don't try that outside of the Philippines. Because either the money will not get to the driver, or the change will not get back to the owner of the change. So these are some of the things, positive things that we can learn from. And there are many, many things here that we can learn from Filipinos, from Japanese, from Korean, from Latinos. And we only say Latinos just like one person, but there are also a lot of variety of Latinos out there. Thank you. See another hand here?
Thank you for the presentation. I'd just like to make probably you can understand the situation. After coming over here, my wife very seldom she wears saris, but now she's wearing pants.
Uh-oh.
And
And are you a pastor?
yes.
Oh, boy.
So now,
Oh, boy.
So
The
now-
wife of the pastor is wearing pants
In
instead
Facebook-
of sari.
no, in Facebook now, all the people in India are going to see she used to wear sari, but now she's wearing pants over here. I mean, so that's how would you help me deal with this?
Yes.
With the people down there at home.
First of all, let me ask you, is it all right with you for her to wear pants?
We went shopping.
Here
together.
at AIIAS.
I helped her shop.
Oh, you went shopping with her. Very good. I think this is a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier because you went shopping with her. Because if you did not, then this would be declaring war in your family. I think this is where we need to be careful with social media. This is a conversation I've been having with my daughter a lot lately. She has clothes that are perfectly fine in my family because we are global citizens. My pastor was asking me, which country do you come from? When I will introduce you, I'm going to tell you which country you come from. I said, I come from the world. I cannot tell you one specific country I come from. I'm already mixed. And that's part of who I am today. The paper may say one thing, but I belong to many different countries. And sometimes I tell her, she said, okay, I'm going to this, I'm going to practice, I'm going to church, I'm going to this. Depending on where she's going, I will tell her, no, that one, I don't want you to go out with that. She said, but why? I said, because it's not appropriate for that occasion. So, because it's been several times that is happening, she has learned, the learning is still ongoing. She has learned that, okay, if it's this, then my dad will be okay for me to go with this. On this one, he will not be okay. On this one, he will be okay. This one, he will not be okay. Having pants from many Eastern cultures for women, it is still a struggle, especially if you are an Adventist, especially when you are a wife of a pastor. And it is amazing how something that to us is trivial, a woman wearing pants here is no longer a big deal to most of us here in this room or in this community. But it can still be a stumbling block for somebody out there. And so I would highly encourage people who come from cultures that are extremely conservative to be careful when we post things online. Because some come from cultures, even makeup, lipstick is already a sin. But here at AIIAS, nobody will stop you, say, hey, go back to your apartment because you have lipstick. Nobody will do that. Because most people are already beyond that. They know that it's not the thing that saves us or sends us to trouble. But if I'm going to post like my profile picture with that, and I know where I come from, where I'm going back to, that they have issues with that, I may have to think twice. I may have to. I'm not saying you have to. You may have to. Because the people you left home are still interested in how you're doing. And the best place to know how you're doing is to go to your Facebook. And so let's be careful with what we post. And this is not just about clothing. It's about everything, all our life that we have here at AIIAS. Let's be mindful how we are posting things there. If it is really a sin, considered a sin, your culture of origin to wear pants, don't post. I would prefer that you don't post that when you wear pants. Don't post it on your Facebook. You'll be saving yourself a lot of headache and saving the work of your pastor, or your husband. Yes, you wanted to add something? Okay.
This is another question. Concerning children and the way each family does things with children. And now when children start seeing other children and how it is done and how they talk in school and, you know, oh, this is allowed, oh, this I can do this I can do that.
Yeah.
So what could you
I,
say
th- I
on
think I
that?
have somebody here who is itching to address that question, and I see her in the back there. Please give the microphone to Miss Ingrid Oberholster. I think she wants to address that one. I think you have come across that, or maybe you even lived it because you spent your younger years here as a foreigner. But that's a foreigner who speaks fluent Tagalog, by the way. Yes. How do you address that? I know you have a very big soft spot for the younger people. I've seen that. We have talked about that.
Okay. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a TCK. If you don't know what that means, it's a third culture kid. If you're living here at AIIAS, your kids are third culture kids automatically.
Yeah.
Okay, what it means is that you are born in one country, but you spend a large majority of your developmental years in a different country. Or maybe you have a passport country and you grow up in a different country. The fact that you've brought your children from your culture and you've brought them to the AIIAS culture, they're not going to be fully AIIAS kids and they're not going to be fully, in your case, Indian kids. They're going to be a mixture of the two.
Yes.
As much as this might hurt you, you will never fully understand them and they will never fully understand you. I'm the product of an intercultural marriage. My mom is from Botswana and my dad is from South Africa. So I'm already a third culture kid in that sense. I moved to AIIAS when I was 6 years old. And I grew up here. So there's many things that they don't understand about me. And there's many things I don't understand about them because I have many Filipino traits within me. I'm sure they can tell you how challenging it was to raise me because of that. But in keeping with your culture, I think it's every family that has to decide. My request to you is that you please consider this when you raise your children. Your children will never be
100%.
fully from your culture.
Correct.
And they are just as confused as you are. And it makes it worse because they're children and they don't understand how the world really functions. And so they look to you to give them that guidance, but you're not able to because you also don't understand the struggle of growing up. When you go home, you're told to act one way. When you go to school, you're told to act a completely different way.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Miss Ingrid. Our time is up for the third culture kids topic. We had a recording on that. You can just try to find that out on YouTube. We have YouTube of United in Diversity. If you type that there and you put third culture kids in there, you will find that information. As much as I want to continue entertaining questions, time is up, and I respect people's time because we started on time. Thank you so much for your input, your questions, and I wish you the best as you adjust to many different cultures.
Professor, thank you very much, Professor, for your time and for sharing your inside experience and then your perspective towards, concerning culture shock. But before we let you go, we will be giving you not a shock, but a token of our appreciation. So here it's given on 18th day of July, 2019, to Dr. Safary Wa-Mbaleka for sharing his experience in culture at the Culture Shock Orientation of the AIIAS Student Association. Professor, thank you very much. And friends, thank you all also for coming here. And for our friends who are watching online, thank you very much as well. And by the way, after this program, there will be like some snacks that will be served that is prepared already for you guys outside. So might as well, after here, we could slowly walk out and then enjoy the time. Before ending, I'll give the time to our Pastor Dan Amanya for some short announcement, and he will be giving the closing prayer as well.
Yeah, I want to inform you that we